being held as a hybrid meeting with access via the council chamber or from remote locations via Microsoft Teams. This meeting is being recorded and will be available via the council's website to be viewed as soon as practicable following the meeting. Please could everyone ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or to a silent mode. Members have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the council's website. This is slightly different to the way we normally undertake these meetings. Obviously, members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting. However, I ask that with the exception of myself, everyone must now keep your cameras on. That's the change Democratic Services asked me. They're trialling at the moment. So if you could all put your cameras on. So I have a sea of faces shortly in my screen. I'm on there somewhere, aren't I? Am I on there? In the bottom corner? It'll be useful to log in. So if you could keep your cameras on, please, everyone. Councillor Williams.
Hi, Chair. I've got COVID at the moment, so I look like a wreck, so I'm going to keep my camera off.
Okay. Councillor Bledsoe, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Could I ask the reason for this, please?
You can, but I can't give the answer because all I've been told is that this is what the authority wishes to trial at the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm just aware of the Welsh Government guidance is that we only need to be audio. We don't have to be seen. So I'm just wondering what the reasoning is. That's all.
What I'll do is I'll try and get the answer for you because obviously this will affect, I should imagine, all meetings of the council, not just mine. But just remember that guidance is just guidance. It's not. It's good practice to follow it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has to. But I will find out for you, Councillor Bledsoe, because you may be subject to it again in future meetings, I'm sure, with the council.
Thank you, Chair.
That's okay, no worries. Thank you for that question anyway. I've still got a couple of councillors not on camera and officers. Councillor Martin Williams.
Morning, Chair. What have I missed, Chair? Why is everyone on camera? That's not usual, is it?
As I explained, I've been asked by your Democratic Services team that they're trialling the issue for everyone to be on camera.
But, Chair, if you want to trial me sniffing away with my COVID face, you're very welcome to see it.
Okay. Oh, was it Councillor Alex Williams who was... my apologies. Councillor Alex Williams.
Hi, Chair. Likewise, I've got COVID, but I do have the answer for you in that it was trialled at the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well, and they're trialling everyone on screen to see whether the system works for full council. So that's the reason why.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. That clarifies it certainly for me. Obviously, you've got a greater knowledge than I have in regards to the workings at the moment. Anyone else on there? I think all the other councillors. Is it Oscar Roberts, is it?
Chair, he's one of our Democratic Services Committee apprenticeship.
Okay. And Simon? Simon Roberts?
Yeah, I can see myself on the screen here.
I couldn't hear what you said then.
Sorry, I said my camera is on. I can see myself here on the screen.
Okay, your audio is very, very faint.
Sorry, is that better?
Ah, marvellous.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, I am on screen, Chair. I can see my camera there. I can see all of you and I can see myself as well. My camera is on.
Okay, no, that's lovely. Okay, right. Well, let's get back down to the other bits. Obviously, keep your microphones off, though, until you're invited to speak, as this will help minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. Whether in the chamber or remote, if any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should please press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right-hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive the requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. As I said, please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I will also ask officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure that their microphones are switched off when not in use. And thank you for that, and thank you for your time explaining why the camera should be on. I'll now proceed to the agenda business. Apologies for absence. I have one apology which I've been notified is Andrew Bagley, one of the independent members. Are there any other apologies? No? Okay. Next item, item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, none shown. Item 3 on the agenda then is approval of the minutes, which are contained in pages 3 to 12 of the pack. These are for correctness only. Someone prepared to move as a correct record, please? Thank you, Councillor Granville.
A second.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. The way we deal with this, anyone against them being the correct record? No, thank you. Item number 4 then is the Governance and Audit Committee action report, and I think, Rachel, you're going to present this.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll just quickly present this to the committee. So, as members will know, the purpose of the report is to provide members with an update on the Governance and Audit Committee action record. In order to assist the committee in ensuring that decisions made by themselves are actioned and implemented, the action record is then attached at Appendix A. If I take you to the recommendation, please, it's 9.1. The committee is recommended to note the action record and provide any comment upon this as appropriate. Many thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Rachel. Are there any comments? Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. There were a number of action points from the last meeting. One of them was the PFI at Maestig School. I think it's the opportune time, Chair, to point this out. If not, if you'd advise me. I think the pricing is very useful because it does give a good background about the whole scheme. And from my reading of it, I don't see that there is any useful purpose in pursuing an early payback. I just like officers' comments on that, but certainly on the face of it, it's something that I wouldn't pursue. Yeah.
It's been completed, so Caris? Sorry.
Right, yeah, no, thank you, Chair. I suppose just for the recording, I'm Caris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that you found that note useful and we sent it out. I must admit our advice as officers would be at this time it's not worth pursuing it. But it's obviously something that we do keep a watchful eye on, and if things change with regards to that and the financial markets, then obviously we will go back and look at it again.
Thank you, Martin. Are there any other comments? No, you've got the recommendation before you that the action report be noted, and obviously note the comments of Councillor Hughes. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Granville. Anyone against? No, thank you. That's carried. Item 5, Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee reports. Deborah?
Chair, I think Rachel's going to be presenting this report from Audit Wales.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. I am, just for the record, the audit manager for Bridgend Accounts Audit at Audit Wales. Unfortunately, I'm not joined with any of my performance audit colleagues today, so I've got some notes from them, and I'll take you through their part of the report, and answer as many questions as I can, but I might have to refer back to them and get them to respond to you after the meeting, if that's okay. It's quite a factual report. It's our quarterly update. Obviously, this is the 30th of June update, so we will actually be shortly issuing our September update. So there's a few changes to talk through from this report. Just on the financial audit work, the audit of the council statement of accounts is ongoing, and we're hoping to complete that by the end of January. Unfortunately, as we've discussed previously in terms of resourcing pressures at Audit Wales, we've had to prioritise our audits. The recruitment market for accountants and auditors at the moment is extremely competitive, and we have unfortunately lost staff to the private sector. So we've had to prioritise our audits, unfortunately, based on when we received accounts. So that has resulted in the delay to Bridgen's audit. But our planning work is done, and we have made a good start. So fingers crossed for that January deadline. I spotted an error in the audit of the grants returns update. That work is not complete, it's ongoing. So NDR and teachers' pension, those two grants are ongoing, and our housing benefit work will follow. I don't think we are going to make the DWP's usual deadline, but we are we're in correspondence with them centrally to let them know that. So there shouldn't be any sort of implications in terms of withholding subsidy. So we're making them fully aware of the issues. On to the performance audit section. And so I've got some notes from Sarah Jane, send her apologies. So the capital programme management, we originally identified that we were going to do this as part of our work. However, I think we've done it at one local authority, and we've decided that we're going to not do detailed work at all councils as part of this year. We're going to defer it to next year or the year after. We're exploring options for what that piece of work actually looks like. And the piece of work on performance information, we've finished our work on this, and we've recently issued our final report to the council. This piece of work is being done at all local authorities, so we intend to issue a national summary report. Moving on to the 23-24 work then, just to flag, we're going to do 2 thematic reviews. These will be done at all local authorities, so you'll be able to benchmark and compare and contrast. We're currently scoping these, and the timescales are not quite confirmed yet, but we'll discuss that with officers and keep you informed as and when we know more on that. And we're scoping the local piece of work as well. Our local government studies work, we've recently published our building safety report, which you can access on our website. And in terms of the corporate joint committees, we've issued separate letters to each of the 4 CJCs, and we're aiming to publish our summary report next month. So I'm happy to take any questions. It's quite a factual report, and our September update will be with you shortly.
Thank you, Rachel. Very kind. Obviously, we've got questions. Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Rachel, for touching on at the outset kind of the point that I was hoping to raise in the first instance. The first thing that is brought to my attention is that this is a report that is dated the 30th of June. And in essence, if it's quarterly, then we're due one in another 2 days' time. And I'm just wondering, is there a way that logistically we can get to look at these reports slightly earlier than 2 days before the next one is due, because it almost feels like it's out of date. And which very timely brings me on to my second point, which you've also raised about there is a report on building safety, which is available on the website. I would have liked to have been able to see that, because as the local ward member for Bridgend Central, we've had to deal with the building safety issue of the Rue Market. So I would have liked to have been able to see that, and I would welcome any links that are available for me to read that, because I understand the terms of this committee and the fact that we are looking back on performance and forward as in relation to risk. But this almost feels out of date to me, because the 3 months have moved so quickly. We're due another report. And one of the key aspects for me is almost out of date, because we've had a big building safety issue arise. And I'm kind of looking at it backwards. I'm not sure if I'm coming across clearly here, Chair. I'm also mindful that I'm not really wording this very well, but I hope you can understand where I'm coming from with it.
I think obviously we've got to keep in line with local authorities' paper deadlines, the committee cycle. So I guess August, you know, there would have been I think it probably would have been ready, but obviously there's no committees doing recess and things like that. And so yeah, take the point that it's out of date, and I can only apologise for that. You're not alone, I should say, in terms of that committee cycle. So yeah, it's something that we're conscious of, and we will hopefully try and get the next one to you a lot sooner. And I can certainly share the building safety report link with you.
Before I ask Councillor Hughes to come in, the question for me there, Rachel, is given the report, was reported at the end of July, the issue regarding RAC basically only came out in August and early September. So I'm just wondering, and Councillor Bledsoe makes a very key point, whether actually this report would have picked up RAC, because I understand, you know, from reading the press that the market, obviously, or the Rue Centre has only closed recently within the last fortnight. But were people aware of it before then, and would it actually been picked up in the building safety report across Wales? Because, you know, it seemed to be that, with all due respect, Wales was behind the drag curve here. England started to announce in regards to their schools, and then all of a sudden Welsh Government picks it up. So I'm just wondering, and you may not know the answer to it, and I'm sure, but the issue about RAC is, you know, very current at the moment, but whether it would have actually been picked up in the building safety report.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I'm not quite sure if it is actually picked up in that building safety report, I must admit. So yeah, not sure. I know from an accounts perspective, it's something that we're actively looking at, because there could be implications in terms of provisions, contingent liabilities, you know, if you've got to do any building works or, you know, do remedial work. So it's something that is a live issue for us from an accounts point of view. And certainly if it's not included in that building safety report that's just been published, I'm fairly certain it's sort of on the radar from a performance audit point of view, probably from a national or LG study point of view, I would have thought. No,
that's great. And I think for Councillor Bledsoe's question, and I think for the committee as well, it would be useful if you know, Sarah Jane can report back in November on, if she could, on that very specific point about RAC and where it's being picked up, because I think it's very key. As you said, the other ones may be dangerous structure notices, etc. But you know, Councillor Bledsoe says, you know, there's something which is ongoing as at this moment in Bridgend. So thank you for that question, Councillor Bledsoe. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could ask Rachel a couple of questions and make one observation. It's mainly on the work programme that is on page 33 and 34. My question is really about the tourism industry in the county borough and where that fits in the programme. I note that there's a item, challenges in the cultural sector. And I think, as we all know, cultural tourism is particularly important in various parts of our county. I'd just like some guidance about how the whole issue of tourism in the county is looked at, and if Rachel could comment on that. The second comment then is about the fact that there's going to be a review of the governance of the fire and rescue services in Wales, which is going to be a major topic. And there was a white paper issued in 2018, which I think identified a democratic deficit in the way that members are appointed. So it's not, I'm not going to speculate about what the outcome of that would be, but I think that's certainly something that this authority would need to keep track on in terms of the way that those people are appointed, or representatives are appointed. The final comment then, Chair, is just on page 36 about the the blogs that I have found have been quite useful. But I noticed that there's been a bit of a drying up of them of late. I think I know what the answer is. It's about it's about staff availability, but just to sort of make that point, and if Rachel could come back on that as well. Thank you.
Okay, I will refer to my my initial caveat in terms of my knowledge of the performance audit programme. So in terms of the tourism piece of work, I'll ask Sarah Jane to come back on where that fits in terms of the overall programme to you. So I'll pass that one on to Sarah Jane. The fire services governance one, we can keep that in view for you and sort of share any sort of findings that may be relevant. I can make a note of that. And certainly make sure that there's a link circulated to the report when it's published as well. And I can feed back in terms of the blogs. My sort of educated guess would be that it will have been sort of staff leave over the summer and into September, and I'm hopeful that they will pick up again. But I'll feed that back as well. That the positive feedback that you found them useful, and that it would be helpful if we could sort of get them up and running again.
Hey,
I was going to say, I can't hear you, Chair, sorry.
Can you lip read? No, I was just going to say Sarah Jane's going to have a lot of work when she comes back in November.
She's not going to be, I'm not going to be popular with Sarah Jane after this one,
I think in regards, just picking up, and again, this is for consideration, in regards to Fire and Rescue Services governance, obviously there will be a consultation process, I should imagine, with the councils and the elected members. But I think there's also a discussion to be had in regards to whether they should have independent members on the Fire and Rescue Service to give that balance in some respects, should I say it there, and proportionality, because obviously each authority provides 1, 2 or 3 members wherever they are. But there are no independent members whatsoever, and if it could be fed in at some stage, that I think that may well be useful, in that scenario. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. On page 2, I'll just refresh the exact wording. Page 2 of the appendix, assurance and risk assessment. The second bullet point is capital programme management, and that has been scoped. Can we have an outline of what is within that scope? Is it just inward looking, or does it benchmark against best practice in other authorities, and also in wider sectors where they manage capital programs? Just a clarity there, please.
So since comes back to the timeliness of this report, we've actually revisited, or we are in the process of revisiting the scope of that piece of work and the timing of it. I think we've piloted the piece of work at one local authority, and are sort of just reflecting on what the best scope is for that. So I haven't got an answer for you for that, but as soon as we've got some clarity, we can share that with you.
So thank you. There's an opportunity then to influence whether we look beyond the sector as well to perhaps utilities or other regulated sectors which are sort of capital intensive, and investigate how they do it and how we measure up to them.
Yeah, possibly. It's a national study, so I think the sort of level of influence from each individual authority, I suppose, is more limited. But certainly, I guess those sort of wider scoping issues around comparisons with other sectors, I'm sure that's something we can consider in our scoping.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Is there any other questions from anyone? Just a couple of questions from me, Rachel. Firstly, in regards to the financial audit work, which hopefully you can answer.
Yeah.
I am a little bit concerned that the audit opinion is not going to come out until the end of January, and hopefully that will not slip. Because it's key really that we sign off the accounts. If it comes out the end of January, it's not going to come to us before February, is it? In some respects, as an authority. So, and hopefully you can recruit, because if you lose more staff, then that may slip again. So it's just some caution I merge in there, because I raise this all the time in regards to. We may be discussing it a little later on about. you know, the fee the council pays to Audit Wales. You know, you may have heard me say before, how do we know that we actually get best value out of our fee we pay? And if there's a delay, you know, are there any penalty provisions that we can claim back from the Auditor General? Maybe you'd like to pose that, not from the council, but from maybe as chair, because I'm sure, I don't know whether the members would support me there, but it's, you know, I can understand your concern regarding staffing, because everyone's going through it, all the public sector's going through it. But the delays do have an effect on the authority and sort of, you know, its statutory timetable. So I don't want you to answer it, but please just bear that in mind.
Yeah, I'll just clarify, Chair, that we're aiming for a January committee. So we're hopeful the work will actually be completed before Christmas. But obviously there's a time, a lead time in terms of reporting and getting through, you know, papers to committee, etc. So yeah, I'm fairly confident for the January committee. I won't call it an absolute, but yeah, I'm fairly confident on that one.
Rachel, we're going to note that in the minutes. You are fairly confident. On another question, which is the performance audit work regarding the thematic review of financial stability of the authority, and obviously that's to be scoped. I'm just wondering what the Auditor General's view is in regards to the number of English authorities being declared bankrupt. There's an indication that Monmouthshire may go bankrupt in 2026-27, I believe. You know, and they're not the smallest authority in Wales. And whether there's sort of balance and proportionality here, because a lot of this will come down to the RSG settlement that local authorities get. And my understanding, I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, that next year's indication is something like 3.9%, Caris. I'm not sure whether that's right. But the 2 years after that, it's about cash neutral, which is a huge, you know, we're on about, it's not efficiency savings, we're on about cuts. With the added dimension, and again, you may not know this, but I'm also told in social care that the government is also removing residential care, the private sector residential care home sector from being used by local government, I understand, and local authorities have to pay for that themselves and not use the private sector. And it's this huge impact upon you know, local government finances. And I'm just a bit concerned that when a thematic report is done, everything is taken in the round. You know, government has said it's £900 million short this year. They need to think what it's going to be next year and the years after. So it's just bearing that in mind when it's scoped out, certainly within the teams within Audit Wales, but also within local authorities. I don't know whether you've got any issues on that or could feedback on that.
I could feedback on that in terms of, I guess, around, you know, the conversation we're having around recruitment and retention, and, you know, the likes of Thurrock and Birmingham, and the value of audit. It's certainly something that we're pointing to in terms of whether, you know, what we can offer and how we can, you know, we're a publicly funded organisation as well, so we're going through similar issues to yourselves. So it's certainly something that we're pointing to from that perspective. But yes, it's definitely on our radar, and it is sort of being built into our risk assessments from financial sustainability on the performance audit side, but also from a financial audit, because, you know, what's the incentive, for example, for a local authority to, you know, manipulate their year-end surplus or deficit, you know, given the financial pressures and things like that.
Yeah, okay. No, thank you, Rachel, for that. Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair. And if possible, I'd like to build on a very important point that you've just raised. And I did pick up on what Rachel said there. And first of all, she named Thurrock as being the first one. And I think we can all look at what happened in Thurrock and actually put it down to cavalier investment policies rather than the infrastructure. But we're starting to see a lot more authorities come under pressure, not because of bad decisions that have been made, but because of contributing circumstances with all of the additional things that we're having to provide and all the extra cuts that we're being forced to deal with. How do we as a governance and audit committee and as a wider authority then try to protect ourselves from what seems to be an influx of local authorities who are almost looking at that route out of a failure to balance the books, because we are duty bound to provide legal, lawful and balanced accounts every year. And whilst Thurrock was the outlier, which can be put down to bad political decisions, I fear that lots of local authorities are going to be looking at the same route not because of cavalier investment policies, but because of pressures. And I fear for what's coming down the road for us. And what do we do at this point, as far as governance and audit goes, to try and stop that in any way possible?
Yeah, I think before Rachel comes in, I think the issue for us as a governance and audit committee is to ensure that the authority's got all its policies, procedures are in place, and we're given the correct assurance that they are delivering the very best for the community within which we serve. You know, I think the point you make, Councillor Bledsoe, is that, you know, it can be financial issues, cavalier finance, but there are real issues about providing baseline services here. And, you know, the most difficult thing, whether you're in power here or anywhere else or not, you've still got to balance the books, and you've still got the communities out there to serve, to deliver services. And I think that's the difficult decision. And with less and less money coming in, you know as well as I, you know, the communities don't like any rise in the council tax, you know, even if, you know, if they're going to provide other services. It's a huge conundrum for the council. So, you know, obviously, I'm sure the members, the officers are aware. We've got the, you know, we've got the Section 151 officer here and the director. But again, it's another decision in another place. And you know, when you get your settlement this year, whenever that may be, December or wherever it is, you know, I think you're going to have some very hard decisions again. But I think our reassurance has to be, has the council got its right policies in the place? And what we need to remember is all councillors represent the council, irrespective party political. You represent the community and the council. So difficult decisions, but there really are, Councillor Bledsoe.
No, thank you, Chair, and I totally agree with you. And I think maybe my question is based around the, you know, a social media post went out yesterday from this authority with the leader stating that this budget's going to be the hardest one ever. Well, I'm just looking down the line and trying to see how we work productively towards a problem that we can all see coming. It's not going to be a surprise to any of us. So I do thank you for allowing me to ask the question, and I think
that's okay. On it. I've got Caris. I'm sure Caris will have something to say. Being the person holding the purse strings.
I suppose I was just going to add to some of the things you've already said, Chair, in response really, is that some of the issues that we see in England at the moment are as a result of considerable commercialisation which has been undertaken over the border. They, I think it's fair to say, they struggled more during the you know, when money was tight and they were forced into making decisions to try and make money for their councils. Members will be aware that actually that route has been closed to councils now because we can no longer borrow to try and support that kind of initiative. And that was certainly one of the things that tripped up Thurrock, wasn't it, really? So that wouldn't be open to us anyway. I think we're still learning from some of those experiences. The reports of what's gone wrong and where are still coming out. But one of the things that has certainly come out strongly in some of them is about a lack of internal reporting and a lack of holding to account. Yeah. So there were significant delegations to officers to make decisions at significant sums of money. And I think what I would do is reassure members, actually those don't exist in Bridgend. We do report through to you on a regular basis on things like our treasury management activity. And actually, thanks to comments from this committee, we have made changes to our treasury management to lower some of the risk. We also report regularly, as you know, through to Cabinet and Council. So, and you'll know that there are policies that come through here. You've got one this morning on governance, really, and we make sure that we bring them through to you. And I have to say, I think we get due challenge on them, and you do work with us on those and you do contribute. And that's not always the case, I have to say. But I think this particular Governance and Audit Committee is very good in that regard. And I think, to go back to you, Councillor Bledsoe, we need to continue to have that challenge, bring those things to you, and you need to be able to raise those things. And we have changed things as a result of that challenge. And all of those contribute to good, strong governance and to make sure that between us we understand the risks and we manage them going forward.
Thank you, Caris. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you very much, Chair. It seems to me when I look at the press that there are three major forces that are causing these problems. One of them we've already discussed about the commercial investments. The second one we've also touched on, which is the increase in social care and the additional responsibilities, especially in England, that the government have put on local authorities. But there is a third one as well, which is specifically applicable in places like Birmingham, which is the risk of pay settlements for discrimination. And I know that we have in Wales a different policy around this, but I think I would like to understand a little bit more around the risk that we might be carrying, or the size of the risk we might be carrying for that type of judgment that might go against us. I've had some reassurances, but I think I would like some of those reassurances maybe in writing.
Okay, Councillor Griffiths, I'm sure Caris will pick those up. I think Rachel's finding this discussion very interesting, but we've gone off a little bit on a tangent, so I'm going to bring you all back now and say I'm not going to allow any more questions or comments. I'm going to take you to the recommendation, unless anything's really burning, but I think it's been given a good discussion. The recommendation then before you is that the committee notes the Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee report at Appendix A. Someone prepared to move it, please?
I'll formally move, Chair. Yes.
Thank you very much. And seconder, thank you, Councillor Hughes. Anyone against? Councillor Griffiths, you got your legacy hand up. Just to let you know. Thank you. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much, everyone, on that one. Next one, we've got the Code of Corporate Governance.
I'll take that one. Thank you, Chair. It probably follows on very nicely, actually, from some of the conversations we've just been having, haven't we, really? Isn't it, really? So the purpose of this report is to present to you and request approval of our Code of Corporate Governance. So good governance is about doing the right things in the right way for the right people in a timely, inclusive and accountable manner. So the Code of Corporate Governance reflects a joint commitment by members and senior managers to the principles that it contains. Corporate governance is a phrase used to describe how organisations direct and control what they do. Effective systems of corporate governance provide confidence in public services. So good governance requires local authorities to carry out their services in a way that demonstrates accountability, openness and honesty. Adopting, monitoring and complying with a Code of Corporate Governance helps to enhance the Council's legitimacy and acknowledges the trust placed in the Council by local people. The corporate governance is based on a framework which consists of 7 core principles, and these are detailed for you this morning in Section 5 of Appendix A. So to achieve good governance, the authority should be able to demonstrate that its governance structures comply with these core principles. This committee is responsible for monitoring and reviewing our governance arrangements, as we've already touched on this morning. And through this committee, the Council ensures that these arrangements are kept under continual review. The review will include consideration of the work that's undertaken by internal audit, the reports prepared by managers with responsibility for various aspects within that code, reports and opinions expressed by our external auditors, and also reports of other regulatory bodies and inspectorates. And you'll know from the work programme that we have here for this Governance and Audit Committee, all of those things are reported to you on a regular basis. Also, each year the Council publishes an annual governance statement, which provides an overall assessment of the Council's corporate governance arrangements, an appraisal of the controls in place to manage the Council's key risks, and details of where improvements need to be made. The annual governance statement is reviewed by the Corporate Management Board and then approved by Governance and Audit Committee. A draft of the annual report for last year was considered by this committee in July 2023, and will be reviewed by our external auditors as part of their review of our annual accounts. And a final version will be published as part of the Council's annual statement of accounts when they come here for finalisation. So if I may, Chair, I would just take you to section 9 of the report, where it's recommended that Governance and Audit Committee considers and approves the Council's Code of Corporate Governance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Caris. Clearly a very clear and precise document. Are there any questions? Councillor Hughes?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's on page 48. One of the initiatives that has been introduced is the Modern Government or ModGov app, which there was a training workshop held at the end of last year for members. The use of that is incredible, actually, in being able to follow meetings, and it certainly helps as far as hybrid meetings are concerned. But I understand there have been some technical difficulties, mostly on the part of ModGov, which has prevented that from being rolled out in full. I think just a suggestion, really, that we follow that up and have a follow-up briefing for members so that they can make full use of that facility. I've been chasing up progress, but I understand that the fault lies with ModGov itself.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that. Caris, have you got any update for Martin?
I can certainly take that away and make sure that we do provide that briefing as soon as possible for members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the reassurance that the technical issues have been firstly resolved, and then maybe another training session to get people on board again to update. Yeah, okay, thanks for that, Caris. Councillor Martin Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When we look at the appendix, let me just flick back. Our core principle B, openness, and there's the whole theme of openness, and you've got the top action is ensuring an open culture through demonstrating, documenting, communication, commitment to openness. Now, this reminds me of something that was discussed in council last week, where we unanimously, has to be said, agreed to increase funding to social services by 3.5 million. 2.5 million, I think, of that came from sources which were difficult to understand. They were from the capital programme, I think it was said, and we were assured that this 2.5 million was not salami slice, I think that's the phrase I used, but it was taken from various places across the capital programme, but it would not have no detrimental impact to that capital programme, or words to that effect. So apologies if my memory is slightly wrong. So essentially 2.5 million was moved to support social services, and yet we were assured that would have no detrimental impact on where it came from. Now, if we roll back to March, I asked a question in the budget, and I asked a question about effectively, I wouldn't say hidden reserves, but reserves and contingencies that perhaps weren't explicitly stated within the budget. And yet, if you roll forward 8 months, 2.5 million, I was assured that wasn't the case, and there was no money squirreled away. And yet, sort of 8 months later, £2.5 million is found within that budget. So, whilst I fully applaud the policy, and I think it's a great framework and a policy to work to, I do have a little bit of difficulty squaring the circumstances I've just described with the words on the document. So I just want an assurance that actually we will be aligned going forward.
I think for me, Councillor Williams, and I hear what you say, the issue is those matters should have been discussed in a different place, so namely council. Now, my understanding is this council is open to anyone to attend, and provided this matter wasn't an exempt report, then it's subject to challenge by any elected member of the authority, and I would hope, and I'm sure Gareth will come in, that the full information was given to members as to, you know, why this is happening. And I think we all accept, I think, that social care and social service are under immense pressure at this moment in time, and it's very difficult to grapple with that budget with the increase in demands. But that matter would have been discussed at full council, and then, you know, Caris would have said, look, this money's coming from here and this money's coming from there. I don't like some wording saying money squirreled away. They're public accounts, this money, so it'll either be coming from the general reserves or an earmark reserves account. So, you know, it's the assurance we need that those policies and procedures are in place. And if the matter has been discussed at council, then my view, maybe not the view of the council or the committee here, that is, you know, it's in the public interest, it's visible, and anyone can look at it and challenge it. And when the accounts come out, they can look at it again. But Caris, can you assist?
Yes, I can. I think, if I may, I just correct one thing, that the money that was, I just want to reassure members that the money that was allocated last week to support social care will not impact on the capital programme, and I was clear about that in council last week. We were not taking money away from any of the capital earmarked reserves that we have, so it doesn't impact on our capital programme. And I think one of the things, and this does link back to our previous discussion as well, is that we've had the time in the last 6 months to look at our earmarked reserves and to look at those which we could either unwind or repurpose in a way that would give minimum risk to the council. We weren't in a position to be able to do that back in March when the issue that Councillor Williams was talking about. And I think for that should reassure you that actually due diligence was done around the risk associated with using that money in that way. And you're right, Chair, that, you know, the reserves are reported in our statement of accounts in quite a lot of detail. And I would assure members that we don't move that money around without having done that due diligence with regards to risk. And the issue in social care has escalated during the last 6 months and is now a considerable service and finance risk for this council. And therefore we had to relook at our reserves with that different lens on.
And I'm sure you hopefully can reassure me as chair that those decisions weren't taken under any delegated power. It was taken to full council for their decision making, presumably.
Within this council, the authority to move earmarked reserves or the use of reserves is actually delegated to me. But it had to be a decision by full council last week that they supported the move to use our reserves this year to support social care, because it does have a financial impact for us for future years as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Caris. Thank you. Councillor Simon Griffiths.
Thank you very much, Chair. If we could move on to page 55 and 56, which is core principle C. I note in there that we don't have any reference to our climate emergency and the net zero strategy. And I think that's probably an omission on our part, since that is now one of our core priorities. I do think that should be probably its own sub-principle, and then with references across to our net zero strategy. I know that we are in the process of refining that at the moment, but we do have a net zero document out there, which I think this particular core principle C should be referring to.
Caris?
We can certainly take that on board, Councillor Griffiths, and look to see where we can include it in this document.
Yeah, thank you. I think that is key, because I know, Councillor Griffiths, you're very passionate about net zero and the climate issues. So, it's one of the key issues that need to be brought forward for every local authority, not just Bridgend. So thank you for raising that.
Yeah, I think every decision we make should have a question in our minds about how does this affect our net zero targets.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it does fit into this. So thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Caris.
Thank you. Thank you. Bayadin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks, Caris, for the document well put together. I have a few comments. I wanted to find out, is it the first version of the Code of Corporate Governance? That's one. If it is not, I think it would be good if we could have like a statement or summary of changes of that document so that we can pay attention to what had really changed if it's not the first version. And I think also maybe for other such governance documents. Then I guess also it'll be good to know whether the code has a frequency of change as well. Is it annual, biennial, or every 3 years? I think something probably also have to think about and make sure that we put somewhere in the document so that it forces a review rather than it's just being still. Which then takes me also to version control. Everything I'm saying is more around good practices, not necessarily that there's a problem with the document anyway. And I think the other thing I have in the document, it talks to Twitter, so there's no more Twitter anyway. So I guess to prevent those sort of things, maybe we should social media or something. Or if you want to still use Twitter, I'll probably say X or in the document. And I think the last point is in page 66, which is 26 of 33. We mention strong public financial, strong financial management. So do we really want to say strong public financial management, or what we meant is strong public management? So I'm not sure whether it's actually public management. So I guess something we'll probably have to check and see whether that's what we meant. I think those are my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Gareth?
No, thank you for those questions. I think your point about making clear where we've updated the document so that it's clear for those views is a good one, and we will take that on board when we bring any sort of future changes to policy so that you know exactly what the updates have been. For some of them, the updates are probably going to be fairly small. It will depend on whether or not the guidance or the legislation in relation to whatever issue we're bringing to you has changed. And some of it will be, I mentioned in the last agenda item that actually we've changed our Treasury management policy, for instance, because of comments that have come forward from this committee. So it is a very good point. And next time we bring any policy, not just this one, I think we will make sure that we include a summary of where those changes are so that you're absolutely clear. That's a good point. With regards to judgment, as I said, we do the annual governance statement, which is our judgment, if you like, of where we are in relation to the governance standards that we've set ourselves. And what that report does is it brings forward from previous years the actions that we said we would do, and it updates you with regards to those, and also updates what we think are the issues going forward into the new year based on the issues that we have. So we've already mentioned, for instance, that we've had significant changes in our social care position. That will come forward, as a risk, and it would be flagged up with actions for us to do. So it is, I think, our monitoring of our governance position is a live one, and you do get regular updates on that via things like the risk assessment that we also bring to you. With regards to how often do we update this document, that's a very good question. Annually. I'm being told, sorry, my colleagues here tell me that it is an annual update. So you will see this on a regular basis. And then with regards to financial management, I think you were asking for sort of reassurance about how we do that. Again, we have a lot of controls in place. Decisions about our budget, for instance, are not delegated. They are full council decisions. Our budgets are managed, reported on very regularly, and any issues that we have in those budgets, risks new that come in during the year, are always reported to members as soon as we become aware of them. Does that answer your questions?
Sorry, no, it's actually about. I'm not asking about. I'm actually asking about what's in the document, page 66, right? Which is 26 of 33. The reference was made to strong public management. So I wanted to just confirm whether what we wanted to write is strong public financial management, not strong public management.
I'm not following this.
But I think it can be checked later if, yeah.
I was going to say I'm happy to have a conversation offline with you if that would help.
it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bowden. Councillor Griffiths, are you poised again?
Yes, please. Yes, please, Chair. Thank you very much. Looking at actually on page 66 again, the managing data. On the last topic there, we got reviewing and auditing regularly the quality and accuracy of data. Now, I know that the Audit Wales last year had some helpful suggestions about how we could improve this. And I note that on the right-hand side there, we have reports follow an approval process and require head office service. But there's no real mention of audit on there or regular checking of data quality. And I wonder whether we could just strengthen that statement on the right-hand side about the evidence about some of the other things that we are doing and should possibly be doing in the future around the checking of data quality outside the actual service, the services themselves. So it's either audit or it's a separate body within the authority.
I think that's a very helpful comment, and that's an example of something that's moved on in the last 12 months, isn't it? So you're absolutely right. We've now got new data checks within the services, within officers before any information comes forward, but also internal audit actually act as a critical friend for us as well and reviews that. So no, that's a development in the last 12 months, which we probably need to reflect in this document. I'll pick that up. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. If there are no other questions or comments, then if we can go to the recommendations. Obviously, the recommendation is there. I was going to suggest that the Council's Code of Corporate Governance be approved, subject to the minor amendments proposed in the meeting, because I note that this has been approved, or has it been approved by Cabinet? Oh, it's been approved by Cabinet. So presumably it'll have to go back to Cabinet again to be amended.
Actually, Chair, I think the final authorisation of this policy lies with yourselves in Governance and Audit Committee. So I would suggest we could do the minor changes. I can obviously check that with members of Cabinet that they're all right with you, but the final authorisation rests with this committee.
Oh, that's okay, because I think, the Cabinet does need to be advised that we had changed it. But again, for the very good reasons that you've said, Caris, they're not being awkward here, but they're picking up changes that have happened within the last 12 months and need to be reflected in the Code of Governance. So the point Councillor Griffiths has made in regards to data, and maybe the point in regards to net zero. Is that okay? So subject to those changes. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll formally move with the amendments, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville, second. And Councillor Hughes, thank you. Anyone against? Oh, thank you. Next item is the ethical investment policy.
I'll take this one, Chair. I hope you'll bear with me. A colleague of mine was going to lead on this, and unfortunately, for personal reasons, has had to leave the meeting this morning. So I'll hope you'll bear with me on this. So the purpose of this report is to present to you an ethical investment policy, which is attached for your Appendix A this morning. It will be incorporated, if agreed, into our Treasury management policy for next year. And as you know, that is approved by full council as part of the budget setting process. So it will be considered by full council back in February and March last year. So actually, this investment policy is another example of something that's been put together as a result of comments that have come forward from yourselves on this committee when we've looked at Treasury management issues. So environmental, social and corporate governance are becoming increasingly important factors in the investment decision-making process. And as I said, it's been raised by yourselves here previously. So what you have at Appendix A is a proposed strategy for inclusion in the overall Treasury management strategy. And there are some key things which we would, commitments that we would put into the Treasury management strategy as a result, really, so that we would ensure that as far as possible, that the investment parties that we do use are signed up to the principles of ESG. We will ensure that the Council and our counterparties seek to act with integrity at all times with regards to their dealings. We will encourage positive behaviour in relation to ESG, and also that we will comply with industry standards. I think it's important to note that when we invest monies, we don't invest in particular schemes. We invest with an authority, actually we're supporting their cash flow. Therefore, we don't say you can borrow this money and this is what you may use it for and this is what you may not use it for. However, so there are some checks, but limited checks that we can do in relation to that. But where we are able to, we will. And if we have any concerns about a body in relation to that, then we will no longer place monies with them. So in summary, really, that's what this policy that you've got this morning is suggesting. So we're bringing it here really to ask you to consider it. And if you're happy with it, to include it in future Treasury management strategies for the Council.
Yeah, thank you for that, Caris. Obviously, I've got a show of hands. I'm sure Councillor Bledsoe would like to come in because, again, this picks up some of his very pertinent points he raised previously. So, Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Caris, because sometimes as councillors, when we seek election to this authority and you want to do good in your community, sometimes you question that judgment when you get 500 pages of reports to read and you get called to 3 or 4 hour meetings. But I think this report here actually shows what a positive difference that we can make as councillors when we come together and shape policies and work together with officers for the betterment of this authority. So I welcome this report, Caris. I think it's a very, very positive move forward and reflective of all of us working together on this. The one question that I would have is, I'm hoping this is a working document that can change, can be altered, and recommendations can come forward, because I welcome everything that you said in your opening. But as the one thing that we are aware of is the world around us changes very quickly, and just I'd like to see that the document can be reflective of that in any way it can. But again, thank you to you, Caris, and thank you to all members of this committee who seem to have shaped something positive going forward.
Thank you for those comments. And just to reassure you that, yes, it will be a live document. I mean, particularly in this area, the world is moving very quickly. So if take on board any comments that we have today. But what I would suggest is that when we bring the final documents forward as part of the Treasury management policy for next year, that it's as up to date as possible. So if anything changes and we think that we need to review it, we will make sure that the policy reflects the modern world, if you like, at the time of agreement.
For that, Caris, Councillor Griffiths next. At least we got net zero in blue here, so hopefully that's a good point for you, Councillor Griffiths.
That's what I was going to say, Chair. So thank you very much for actually including this, and I think you've included in a very balanced way as well. It's not overriding. You put it in a way that it needs to be considered, but it doesn't override other factors. So yeah, so it's a big thank you actually for bringing this in and putting in the document, and congratulations to, I think, doing a very good job in this.
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffith. I'm starting to read people's minds now as to what they're going to raise. I'm a bit lost now. Councillor Granville.
I like to keep you on your edge, Chief. I like to keep you on your edge, Chief. Oh, sorry. My fault. Can I ask? I don't know. I've got one on.
Chair, we can't hear anything.
Right, is that better? Thank you. All right, Steve. Yeah. Seems I get it, Chair. It seems a mess. I don't know.
What did you want to raise, Caris?
But basically, I don't know where that's. Oh, okay.
Is there any due diligence, Chair, regarding the issue of that second bullet point with companies that we do? Is there anything in writing make sure that they are legally a company, balanced, that they've got money in their accounts to service whatever we're asking them to do. That's all I'm asking, Chair, because that's very open in the way it's been said.
Yeah. Mr. Granville just raised a point on the second bullet point of the last paragraph on page 80 in regards to carrying out due diligence in regards to bodies that the council may wish to enter into any relationships with and such like.
No, thank you for that question. Just to reassure you, that really refers to when we're entering into contractual arrangements with any company. And yes, we do checks on that company with regards to financial checks and their ongoing financial viability. But we can also start to look at some of the other issues, the broader issues that would come up under sort of the environment, social and governance considerations as well.
That's okay. Councillor Martin Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I echo what some of my colleagues have said earlier. You know, a lot of good work has gone into this, and you know, congratulate the team for putting it together. Just an observation. It is pleasing to see that we haven't excluded explicitly certain categories of investment or categories of what's the word I'm looking for, organizations or corporations. And it's a broad piece, and you know, gives principles to work to rather than explicit things. And I hope that, yeah, as was said, it's a live document. I hope we continue to steer away from that to allow us to consider things, you know, broadly but within this ethical framework. So yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. I think your Treasury Management Policy deals with some of those issues as well, individual as to who you loan to and the principles. This is clearly just reinforcing some of those principles as well. Yeah, thank you. Oh, that's it, no one. If there's no other comments or questions, if we go to the recommend, oh, Biden.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to confirm, is it the old document that is going into the existing policy or the parts that are highlighted? And the reason why I asked that question is because of references that were made to specific financial institution in the document. I think a policy document should, as much as possible, not have specific details of say it's Barclays, it's Santander and all those other banks. So I think that it should be based on the principle, and all the banks or institutions that meet that principle will qualify, because if it changes during the course of the period, then we won't be able to use the document anymore and we'll then be calling for a change. Just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the issue is this is the whole document at the moment, so you don't exclude bits and pieces. And I think the piece you've just picked up in regards to Santander, Barclays, etc., as Caris has said, this is a live organic document, and changes will be made when appropriate. You want to add anything, Deb?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for the recording, I'm Deborah Exton, Deputy Head of Finance. So yes, as the Chair said, the whole document will be included in the Treasury Management Strategy. But as we've said earlier, obviously the Treasury Management Strategy is a live document. It's updated in full and reapproved by Council in February or March when the budget is set. But also we have the opportunity, and we bring it back to full Council halfway through the financial year as well, to actually make any necessary changes at that point. So obviously, you know, it does mention specifically Barclays, our current bankers at the moment, and obviously if that changed, we would have that opportunity to update that during the year. So that shouldn't be a problem for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Does that answer your question, Biden?
Yeah, it's fine, right? It's fine. Even though I would probably have said it should be an appendix actually, rather than changing document because there's actually a change, because there'll always be a lag but it's fine if that's actually how it's to be done. I'm happy with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. If there are no other comments, then if we go to the recommendation, I suggest the recommendation is that the ethical investment policy be noted, and that the committee agrees with its inclusion in the future Treasury management strategy.
Move we note, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Anyone against? No. Thank you. Progress against the internal audit risk-based plan 23-24. Joan?
Yes, thank you. Hello, for the tape, I'm Joan Davis, Deputy Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. This report is to provide members of the committee with a position statement on the progress being made against the audit work included and approved within the Internal Audit Risk-Based Plan 2023-24. The Regional Internal Audit Service has set quarterly targets to monitor the delivery of the approved audit plan. This will assist in ensuring sufficient audit coverage has been given to the Council to provide an overall opinion at the end of this financial year. The targets are set out in the report, and at the end of Q2, which is the 30th of September, the target is 30%. As of the 30th of August, 10 of 39 planned audit reviews have been completed, and this equates to a completion rate of 26%. Table 1 within the report explains the status of the planned audits, and Appendix A gives the detailed information. If you go to Table 2, this summarises the audit opinions given to date. You can see that 9 audits have been given substantial or reasonable assurance, and 1 audit has been given limited assurance. Details of the risks identified in this school vehicle audit has been included in the report. The approved plan included 12 audits that were not undertaken or completed in the 22-23 plan. Table 3 shows the status of these audits, and the detail is at Appendix B. It can be seen that 3 of the 12 audits have now been completed, 5 were in progress, and 1 was due to start. Appendix A also includes recommendation details, but that's covered in the next recommendation monitoring report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Joan. Any questions, members? Councillor Granville?
The actual report, instead of having it from like final report issue number 4, 10%, can we change the analogues so we've actually got from 0 to 100 and go up in graphs so we can identify exactly where they are? Because that sometimes we were false information, not reading exactly what is actually happening on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Because we've just gone through that now, we just had training on it, and that was one of the exercises that we had to do. So I just like to perhaps change the graphs so we can actually see from 0 to 100 exactly where the tick goes up, where it comes down, so you've got a better identification of what it is actually happening on the ground. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Granville just raised a question about the way the data is presented, and could it be done in graph format in some issues? And Joan is now going to come back and tell us yes or no, I should imagine.
We'll obviously take that into consideration, yes.
Okay,
thank you.
Any other questions? Any comments? Can I just raise the issue about school vehicles, which is contained in paragraph 3.6? I'm sure people have read it. This gives me grave concern. It gives me not grave concern about what's actually identified in there. You know, weights of vehicles not known, failing to review driving licenses to ensure that those who drive the vehicles have got the right classification on their driving license, etc., etc. And the real risk here, I think, as Joan has picked up, is in the event of an unfortunate accident, you know, and the school hasn't checked that the person driving it's got the right classification of, you know, license, and some young people are injured or, you know, worse, there's a huge claim going to be arised here in regards to these matters. So I think once this, once the report is issued, and obviously you'll be discussing the actions and remedies, I think it may well be worthwhile the head of service and maybe the director of education being called in to account for this, because is this a corporate issue or is it a school issue?
We examined 7 schools that had vehicles, but obviously it involves the directors aware and communities as far as the garage and the vehicles are concerned. So it's cross-cutting, really. Okay, so obviously I'll wait until we get the full report, but I think it is a matter of concern in regards to the position that schools may be placing the authority in. So let's wait to see the report is, and then we call in the director and see what they're going to do about it. And then maybe, I know this is just a sort of a dip test really in regards to 7 schools. It would be interesting to know how many schools throughout the county borough have got vehicles, 15-seater minibuses, 12-seater minibuses. How do they check their driving licenses? Because if this is the tip of the iceberg, we never know where we're going to go as an authority. And that this doesn't give me, and hopefully the committee, the assurance we need that the right policy and procedures are in place. Councillor Martin Williams.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, Chair. And I think it's a proof of the importance of independent members on this committee, because I think the councillors on here didn't perhaps pick that up. So thanks for that. And it is a concern, and coming from an industry that runs large fleets, fleet safety is paramount. And often I would have a report at least once a week of the condition of every vehicle and every trailer and licenses and the rest of it. So thanks for raising that. It is a concern. Is this purely council owned or school owned assets, or does this extend to contracted services as well? Because I am aware that there have been concerns over the years, maybe not bubbling up to become a major concern, but certainly there have always been in the background concerns over the condition of contracted buses, the conduct or the alleged conduct of drivers, and so on and so forth. And I wondered whether it was the broader piece or whether it was just council-owned vehicles.
Yeah, my understanding is, and I endorse what you say, Councillor Williams. I think there are 2 different issues here: contracted vehicles, homeschool transport or whatever. Then, as part of the contractual responsibility, then the authority should be checking it, and it's key that the buses and that are fit for purpose and got the relevant MOTs and are driven by the right people and got the right number of escorts should they need it. This does concern me. And again, I think it may not have happened before here in the authority. It may have, I don't know. But calling a director in and the head of service who's responsible for this actually concentrates the mind. And they are accountable and responsible of delivering some of these services. And as I said, I as chair, and hopefully you as a committee, this doesn't give me the assurance that we've got this right. And I'm not saying we're here to knock the director. We're here to improve the service we provide to these young people. And if anything goes wrong, and we knew about it, it'd be awful. But there we are. Councillor Granville.
I would take it that due diligence would have been done, and they would have had to show their license before they, as a school teacher, right? Now you can drive minibuses on your license under the categories. So I wouldn't want to jump down straight away to director here. I think what we should do is perhaps probe a little bit to make sure, is this just internal or external?
Yeah.
Before we blow it all out of proportion.
But that's why I've said we need to wait for the full report. I endorse fully what you say, but actually in the narrative it says some of the schools failed to regularly review staff driving licenses to ensure validity. Yeah. And some vehicles have been driven by staff who did not hold the correct license. So, I understand what you're saying, but this is actually factually saying what hopefully would have been done as good practice isn't being done. Okay, no, I know you do. So let's get the full report. Let's see what it is. Okay. Any other comments? No, if there are no comments, then I think the recommendation is that we note the content of the report and the progress made against the 23-24 internal audit risk-based plan. And Joan will go away and look about the graphs, and obviously we'll look forward to receiving the full report on the school whatever. Yes, Andrew.
Chair, can I just clarify in terms of the full report? That doesn't normally come into Governance and Audit Committee. No. We provide you with a summary of the key issues, as we've done in this particular instance. As a committee, are you requesting the full report?
No.
Or just the action plan and then inviting the relevant directors next time round?
I think what we need to see is that the full report's been issued to the director and the schools. The action plan has been agreed with the director and that. And then once we see what that is, if we're satisfied that it's being addressed, then so be it. But I think there does need to be just a shot across the bows to say this isn't good practice. But I think there's a piece of work that needs to be done by the Director of Education in regards to all schools, maybe filling in a pro forma now to reassure this committee that every school that's got a minibus or it's being driven by teachers have got the requisite insurance, classification of driving licence, etc. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Is that okay, Andrew?
Thanks for the clarification.
Okay. So obviously you see the recommendation, and someone prepared to move? Thank you, Martin.
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Anyone against? No, thank you very much. Internal audit recommendation monitoring. Joan, again.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide members of the committee with a position statement on internal audit recommendations made, implemented and outstanding as at the 30th of August 2023, and Appendix A provides the detail. A total of 3 high and medium priority recommendations have been made following conclusion of audits from the 23-24 plan to date. All have been agreed and 2 have been implemented, and 1 has a future implementation date which has been agreed. In respect of audits completed prior to this financial year, 9 medium recommendations are now overdue, and these are detailed at Appendix B. There are also recommendations made prior to this financial year that still have a future planned implementation date. Appendix C provides the detail of 3 recommendations made in 2021-22 audits that still have future dates. These have also been highlighted to chief officers in the council to make them aware of the outstanding risks and actions. The monitoring of recommendations is undertaken regularly by auditors, and any undue delays or issues are highlighted to senior management and ultimately to this committee. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Councillor Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I noticed, the appendix there with the overdue actions. What's the consequence for overdue actions rather than your action appearing in an appendix of a committee that isn't the most highly viewed committee, I would suggest? Is there any real consequence for not actually doing what you've agreed to do?
Yes, thank you for the question. As I said, we highlight the outstanding recommendations to senior management, so they're aware of the outstanding risk. So it's then for the managers to accept the risk and take ownership of that, or there may be other things that have been put into place that aren't exactly the recommendation, but it has mitigated that risk. So that's an ongoing dialogue. So as far as the consequences, we highlight the risk, and it's for the manager to either accept the risk or to implement the recommendation.
Just to add that, Chair, in terms of the consequence, it comes through to Governance and Audit Committee. It does go through to CMB, so they report it at the director level, like Joan says. If the committee so wish, they can call in directors or heads of service. That's not a comfortable position to be in, as I'm told by many directors and heads of service. So therefore, there's an ultimate risk to the authority that if the recommendation is not implemented, the risk continues to occur.
Yeah, I didn't get your point, Councillor Williams, about the. I don't know whether it's about the teeth of this committee or what will the consequences will be. And before Martin comes in, now Caris, you can rest assured. What I'm going to propose in a minute, once people have had their comments and questions, is that, I'll tell you what I'm going to propose, that this matter be referred to the management team as a matter of urgency, that each director takes accountability and responsibility for the matters that are outstanding. There are some here that have been outstanding since 2021, which, with all due respect, isn't good enough. And if they decide and we'll report that back to the November committee, and if there are major issues for which they can't account or, are uncomfortable at, then they will appear before this committee. Because as a committee, we need to be given the assurance that all these policies, procedures and such like are in place. And if we're not, then it may have not happened before, but it will certainly happen in the future for as long as I am the chairperson. Councillor Hughes.
Yeah, don't know how to follow that, Chair. I think you've taken all my comments and indeed Councillor Williams has covered most of the points. I'm happy to second your recommendation.
Thank you. Caris.
I feel I ought to speak up as an officer who's actually probably in one of those things, because the cybersecurity issues rest with me. Let me tell you, being an officer thinking they're going to be pulled in front of you is not a welcome thought. So I suppose from my point of view, we have reported into you on here and actually to one of the corporate scrutiny committees, which have included our cybersecurity. And we've done some work. I think I'm going to put my hands up and say we've been tardy in keeping internal audit informed of that. But also what we're now going to do is meet with Joan to go through actually what has the service done? How does that relate to the recommendations that have come forward? And then we'll take from audit whether or not they think we've done enough or there is still some work to be done. Yeah. So I suppose I'm just feeding back to you personally. Directors won't want to be here in front of audit. So I fully take on board what you've said, Chair, about us taking these back through into our corporate management board and reminding people and getting responses back to internal audit as soon as possible.
Maybe I, as Chair, are quite forceful, and I need to have the committee with me to make this decision. It's not my decision on my own. But, if there are reasons why they're not being done, then we need to know. And I think that's the reality. And if there's an issue about, about the system we're using or something that needs to be addressed in there. But what we cannot allow is recommendations to be outstanding since 2021. And it's not this authority. Andrew will tell you that I chair 2 other authorities, and people are now in very uncomfortable positions in those authorities because I'm calling them in. Because people need to be held accountable and responsible, and that's what our role is. So I'll shut up now. Councillor Martin Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I know that Councillor Hughes seconded your proposal. If it was possible to third it, rest assured I would, but I'm completely behind that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Granville.
See if it works now, Chair. Right. On page, so on the appendix it is, page 99, I'm not happy with the word reasonable, Chair. I think there should be a better answer than that. Now, I don't know if that's for or against, right? Where are we with the, with the audit's opinion? It's very unflexible as I look at it, Chair. And I just think there should be perhaps a different word in there to say unsatisfactory, satisfactory. You know what I mean? Not reasonable. That could be called into doubt.
Yeah.
I've just posed the question to officers.
I think these are standard terminology within the audit field. If you have a look at page 85 in the previous report, obviously we've got substantial, reasonable, limited, no assurance. So they actually define what reasonable means. Are we all right, Richard? 85, page 85. It's the coloured boxes. Okay, so that well, I'm going to keep quiet because I'm taking over here. Can I leave it the officers to answer the question?
Thank you, Chair. It's Andrew Wathen, the head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. I think that's a valid question which has been asked quite a few times. As you say, the definition of our opinions is at page 85 of your papers. They are fairly standard. They're recommended by the SIPFA Special Interest Group for internal audit across the whole of the UK. So the majority of internal audit teams across the UK have accepted and adopted those opinions and those definitions.
Thank you for that answer, Chair.
And we have to remember that Andrew represents 4 authorities here, and if Bridgend wanted to float its own boat, then there may be some issues. But I think, given that they are nationally agreed through SIPFA, it's very useful, that page, because I know Joan produces it time and time again. Because reasonable and satisfactory is okay. If you have a look at what the other criteria is, which is limited, and the no assurance, that's what gives me major concerns when I deal with these issues. It does. I'm sorry, but there we are. Andrew, did you want to say anything else?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to go back to the former councillor's question, and just to give some background, really, I guess, in terms of the work that we do as internal audit. We go into all services across the organisation to make sure they're operating efficiently and effectively. In the work that we do, we identify key controls in terms of that service provision, and we identify strengths and weaknesses. Any weaknesses are identified through an action plan, and then we would put a corresponding recommendation in place to make sure that the control is addressed or improvements are made. That action plan at the time is then agreed by the service manager to implement that recommendation to demonstrate improvement of service delivery and efficiency and effectiveness use of public money. We then, as Joan mentioned, check on a regular basis that those recommendations have been agreed. We then report that into Governance and Audit Committee on a regular basis, but we also update CMB as well. But the reason we are where we are is because sometimes there needs to be a new system or there's a resource issue. But just to reiterate, it's the service manager has actually agreed our recommendation at the outset, included in the action plan. And then when we issue the final report, the copy goes to the head of service and the director as well. Just to give a bit of background in terms of how the recommendations appear in the action plan, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other comments? No? Okay, the recommendation then is that I think the contents of the report be noted, and in respect to the information provided on the status of the recommendations by the Regional Internal Audit Service be noted. But a second point, that Appendix B be referred to the management team as a matter of urgency, and that, I don't know whether it would be you, Cass, to report back in regards to the comments from each of the matters raised therein, so that we can consider them. But I don't want to be too onerous for yourself. I don't know whether it should be a corporate issue so someone pick it up, but can we have a report back in November on the points?
Yeah, I'm happy to take
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So we've got the recommendations. Someone move? Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
I'll second, Chair, with the amendment.
Granville. I think it was thirded by Councillor Martin Williams. Anyone against? No, thank you very much for that. The public sector internal audit exterior peer assessment. Andrew?
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Wathen, head of the Regional Internal Audit Service. And this report is to provide members with an update of the external peer assessment of the Regional Internal Audit Service compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. So the public sector internal audit standards are standard across the whole of the UK, and all internal audit services working within the public sector must comply with those standards. They came into being in 2013 and were updated into 2017. One of the key requirements is obviously for internal audit teams to be compliant but also to have an external assessment of that compliance once every 5 years. As a regional service, we do an annual self-assessment to ensure we are compliant, but that needs to be reaffirmed once every 5 years. The Welsh Chief Auditor Group elected to adopt a self-assessment approach and then get another member of the group to peer assess that on a periodic basis. At the time, the first round of assessments, that was agreed with the Section 151 officers, and Audit Wales were comfortable with that arrangement. So this morning's report, and the full report is at Appendix A for information. It's quite a detailed report. It's the validation of our own self-assessment to ensure that we, as a regional service, are conforming with the expectations of the public sector internal audit standards. You note, Chair, that the report is in the name of the Acting Chief Internal Auditor at Newport City Council, and at this stage I have to declare an interest in that I was part of the assessment team in a different role prior to me getting the job within the regional internal audit service. But to reassure members that I did it in conjunction with my colleague audit manager, who is a qualified SIPFA accountant and has over 16 plus years internal audit management experience. So we did it as a joint exercise, and as members will note, it's been reported in her name as the Acting Chief Internal Auditor. Members will be pleased to note, I'm sure, that there are 305 requirements to make sure that we are in line with, and the Regional Internal Audit Service is compliant and conforms with all 305 requirements. There were no partial or non-conformance areas, which is very reassuring. There were 2 areas of suggested further improvements, just to make sure that the service continues to improve and demonstrate good practice, and the region itself identified its own areas for improvement, which are outlined in the action plan at the beginning of the full report. Thanks go to my predecessor, and to Joan and to Lisa and to the team for ensuring that we, as a regional service, continue to provide a professional internal audit service and are compliant with the standards. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. I just suggest that if we have one of these next time, that you declare an interest and let Joan deliver it on your behalf. I understand, obviously, that you wouldn't have influenced it because you didn't know you were coming here, but just to protect yourself, Andrew. Is that okay?
Point taken, Chair.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm not being critical. It's just you need... Right, okay. Any questions? No questions? Any comments? No comments. A good report, obviously. Complying with 305 requirements, which is excellent. So well done. So the recommendation, which I've now just sort of quickly amended again, that the public sector internal audit standards external peer assessment of the regional internal audit service at Appendix A be noted, and we acknowledge and endorse that the regional internal audit service is fully conforming to those standards. Someone prepared to move, please? Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Granville. Anyone against? No, thank you. That's carried. Governance and Audit Committee Annual Report 22-23.
Thank you, Chair. This is me again. This report is the committees, the Governance and Audit Committee's annual report for 22-23, as the Chair says. And this is the first time that this has been tabled by the committee. It's a report on behalf of the committee. So I've drafted the first version, and we'll open it up to comments and questions as we progress through it, Chair, if that's okay. It's good practice to have an annual report in place for the committee. Outlines the compliance with its terms of reference, which is part of the Council's constitution, and also its conformance with SIPFA's best practice statement on audit committees. The terms of reference are detailed in 2.5 of the paper, and then there's an appendix in terms of how it's complied with the terms of reference and SIPFA's best practice, with examples of reports that have been presented to and considered by the committee during 22-23. There's also a self-assessment of how well members felt they were understood the process, their knowledge of various aspects in terms of compliance with the terms of reference and CIPFA's good practice, and that's set out in the appendix as well, Chair. So in terms of the report itself, it goes into quite a bit of detail in terms of the examples that have actually been presented to committee this year. The Appendix 1 outlines the terms of reference for the committee. Appendix 2 details the meetings which were held and the reports which were presented and considered. And then moving on to Appendix 3 provides a summary of the self-assessment, knowledge and skills of the members of the committee, which was undertaken probably about November 22. It's reassuring to know that there was 80% positivity in terms of that self-assessment by committee members in terms of their knowledge and experience. At that point, Chair, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Before there are any questions, can I make this proposal? Because what I was going to suggest is that obviously Andrew's brought this report to us in draft format at the moment. This is the first time members will have seen it. And my proposal basically is that we agree in principle, subject to any members of the committee wishing to make any comments they have on the draft report to Andrew within 21 days. So obviously, you've only just seen it. I think you do need, because it's our report to start with, if you've got any issues or you want to pick something up, and obviously members have been picking up issues all throughout this morning's meeting, to relay them back to Andrew within 21 days from today's date. And then Andrew will bring what I'm proposing, the final report to committee on the 9th of November. So if obviously members got any questions now, you may just wish to put those in writing to Andrew with your comments, and then we deal with it in the November committee. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. Just a general one. There doesn't seem to be any really strong improvements recommended as part of this report, and I wonder whether there could be a section to do with this is how we can do better next year compared to what we've done this year.
Yeah. And I think that, those comments you need to make, because I think that, obviously the report in reality should say, look, this is where we were, this is what we've done, and this is how we're going to improve. And yeah. I think that's key for us really moving forward. And I think if members of the committee could pick those points up for Andrew, then we can incorporate them in the report. Is that okay, Andrew? Happy with that? Okay, so any comments to Andrew within 21 days from today's date, if that's okay? Are there any other comments? No? Okay, so the recommendation I propose is that the draft annual report be agreed in principle, subject to any comments by members of the committee being made within 21 days to the head of the Regional Internal Audit Service, and that the final report be brought back to Governance Audit on the 9th of November for sign-off. Are people happy with that? Can I have a mover, please? Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Anyone against? No, thank you. That's carried as well. Next item on the agenda is item 12, the Forward Work Programme. Deb.
Yeah, that's me. Thank you, Chair. For the recording, Deborah Exton, Deputy Head of Finance. And the purpose of this report is to present the updated Forward Work Programme for the remainder of the year. To outline some of the reports that will be being brought to committee to enable you to undertake your responsibilities that are outlined in paragraph 2.1. The detailed Forward Work Programme for the year is outlined in Appendix A, and the items due to be presented at the next meeting are outlined in paragraph 3.2 in the table, but obviously we've heard during the meeting there may be other reports coming back again. Just a couple of things to point out really. There was a report due in this meeting on disabled facilities grants, but having spoken to the team. They feel there's more merit in postponing that until the November meeting, where there'll be more information available. So it'll be a fuller report.
We've got lots more time as well, I think.
Yeah, and also we've got the report on the Porthcawl Harbour return, the audit letter, due to come back in November. But obviously we've heard from Rachel earlier in the meeting about the potential delay in auditing the account. So that actually may be postponed until the January meeting. Committee will obviously be aware we've actually scheduled another meeting in for the middle of December, but it's probably unlikely that the accounts will be in a position to be signed off by then. So the chances are that meeting may be cancelled, but we'll obviously,
We're into February, I presume.
No, I mean, Rachel was fairly confident that they would come to the January meeting, which is towards the end of January as well. So
Can
hopefully,
we make that in a note that in the minutes that Deb also supports.
I'm hopefully confident as well. Otherwise, we'll be into the next financial year.
Exactly. Yeah.
So the December meeting may be cancelled. So just be aware of that if that's okay. Thank you, Chair. So taking you to the recommendations, that's to approve the updated forward work programme.
Yeah. Obviously, we'll need the the report we just mentioned, the committee report, annual report. There may be others which obviously the forward work programme will adopt as and when they come. You may have some more important issues or such like. The other, if I can take advantage, and I shouldn't take advantage, we were going to have a presentation by the DWP, which Councillor Colin Davis I know raised. Do we have an update on that, Caris?
I can confirm we have contacted them and they are willing to come in and give a general briefing really for members with regards to their work, which would include the issues that we spoke about at the last meeting. So we're just looking now to get the date in. I was going to suggest, Chair, that we throw that open to all members, actually, not just members of this committee. But no, we are working on setting a date for that.
Lovely. I agree with that. I think that's very important. Councillor Griffiths?
Just a minor point on page 165 on the frequency. We've got two reports which don't have a frequency against them. One of them is Code of Corporate Governance and the other one is Treasury Management Strategy, I think it is. No, the Ethical Investment Policy. I just wondered, should those...
We've just had them today, haven't we? So, yeah.
Do they have a frequency against them?
We would bring them back if we felt there was a need to review them and update them. I mean, we can put ad hoc on if you like. I mean, it could be annually we mentioned annually we mentioned for the Code of Corporate Governance. And in terms of the ethical investment policy, that's probably annually as well, in line with the Treasury Management Strategy. So we can amend that for the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
But I assume, Deb, it won't be separate. It will be part of the Treasury Management Policy, won't it? It won't be a separate document. No, that's okay. Good. Biodin.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I have a similar comment, but I think my reference, what I'm looking at is the corporate risk assessment, which talks to it says that at regular intervals. Right, I would recommend we probably put a frequency there, because I could see there's actually a bit of frequency now. It's or when it's presented. Similarly, is on complaint process. It says ad hoc. I think that I could also see a pattern. So I would, rather than it being ad hoc, I think it would be good that we put a frequency to rather than it being ad hoc. Thank you.
Yeah, in regards to complaints policy process, compliments, complaints, and whatever else it is, there's a legal requirement anyway to report it every 12 months. But I think in the committee last year we suggested there should be a 6-monthly review of them. So obviously it's been picked up in there. It's rather it should be 6-monthly rather than ad hoc, and I'm sure that. They'll take it back. It's coming to the next committee in any event, so we'll pick that up then. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on some comments raised earlier. First of all was the building safety, and then the one you raised about the fleet safety on the buses in particular. Are we as a committee confident that matters of health and safety, or health and safety and compliance governance are adequately covered as at the moment, or should we consider whether we have every 6 months we have a committee that specifically looks at governance in this matter, or even I hate to add to things, but even a health and safety sort of subcommittee. It was just putting it out there really that in amongst all of the exciting talk of money and the treasury management and the rest of it, these things can perhaps get lost, and you know, you picked it up, you know, to your credit, but it's perhaps a bigger issue than it might have first seemed, you know, on a line on a page there.
Yeah, can I leave that with Caris, because obviously we've got a very specific role, and I endorse what you say about giving assurances, but some of these other issues should be either picked up by a scrutiny committee. If there is issues regarding health and safety in the authority, it will be picked up by one of the scrutiny committees, and then obviously it may come to us in regards to you know, a part of a more open report. But if I can leave that with Caris, is that okay? Can you have a little look at that, Caris, where it goes to and
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I would add is obviously something had gone wrong. I hate to use that phrase, but something had occurred for it to come to our attention in the first place. So if we could, you know, what happened so that we were the last line of defence, if you like.
Yeah, I think the issue is clearly if there was an issue, a big issue, then the likelihood is that the management team will ask internal audit to have a look at it and to review it, and then obviously it will come back in that way to us, as Caris, I should imagine, and the team do on a regular basis, is to ask internal audit to have a look at it, and then obviously we can look at it then, and the points picked up in regards to the school minibuses issues would be picked up by the audit team, and we can look at a balanced report. So yeah, thank you for raising that. Okay, you've seen the forward work programme. The recommendation is that we approve it for 23-24. Someone prepared to move, please?
Formally move.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Hughes, thank you. Anyone against? No. Thank you. Item 13, there are no other urgent items. Can I say, before I close the meeting, thank you all for your contribution today. I think it's been a really good meeting again, and look forward to seeing you all in November. And I'd like to thank the officer team as well for, you know, very good reports. So thank you very much, everyone. The meeting is now closed, and it's been lovely to see you all.